Thank you for joining our webcast. Let's go to the next page, please. Congratulations and welcome to the Secretary Treasurer webcast. We're so happy you've taken on this important position for your section. As a Secretary or Treasurer, you will be part of the leadership group for your council. I'm Beth Bernardi. I'm Director of Member Engagement. Also presenting today will be Dee Berger, Community Manager, along with Carla Eisenberg and Caitlin Kramer, our Engagement Specialists. Before we get started, let's go over just a few housekeeping items. This webcast is being recorded, and we will send you the slides and a link to the recording in a few days. At any time during this webcast, please enter your questions in the Q&A box. We will address all questions at the end of the webcast. Next slide, please. So today, on this webcast, you will get a chance to learn a lot about the role of Secretary and Treasurer. We'll go over the responsibilities and duties of each role, including best practices for the quarterly financial statements, developing an annual budget for your section, expense reimbursements, how your section delivers value to the section membership, partnerships and contracts, and more. Next slide, please. So let's talk about Secretary first. Next slide, please. So the Secretary and Treasurer are two different council leadership roles. Some councils choose to combine these roles so that one council member is responsible for both. The main responsibility of the Secretary is to take notes during all section council meetings and to distribute the notes shortly afterwards. This is a very important role. The note should include all the votes and decisions and that are taken by the council, and this is used most often when a question arises regarding a past council discussion. Some section council secretaries have chosen to use the agenda as a template, and they have added their notes to that. Some have inserted pre-reads that council members have sent in advance of the call to the notes. There is no correct way to take notes, so we encourage each of you to find a style that you're comfortable with. If the secretary is worried about keeping track of it all, the call can be recorded by your engagement specialist so that you can listen to it and make sure you've got all the pertinent information. The secretary may also be asked to organize and distribute the agenda. Typically, the meeting notes are reviewed by the council members on the monthly call, so if any edits can be made if needed. The notes are not the same as minutes per se. They are not, there's no formal vote required or approval by the council. So next, I will turn it over to Caitlin.
Great, thank you, Beth. And now on to the next slide to discuss the role of the treasurer. Treasurers are responsible for monitoring the section finances and should alert the council of any potential issues. All information related to the section finances can be found on the quarterly financial statements. Many treasurers find it helpful to prepare an annual budget, which we will discuss more later. Council members should always keep in mind that sections are part of the SOA and as such must comply with all SOA policies, guidelines, and procedures. And next slide, please. Treasurers are also responsible for providing updates on the quarterly financial statements. The quarterly financial statements are worked on by the SOA accounting department and then sent to your engagement specialist. The engagement specialist then verifies the income and expenses and lists out the details on what has been spent for that quarter. Once the financials are completed, your engagement specialist will email the financials to the chair, vice chair, secretary, and the treasurer. And next, on this next slide, we have a poll. And you can go ahead and launch the poll. Question is, which statement is true of either secretary or treasurer? A, the secretary is responsible for leading all council calls. B, the treasurer is responsible for taking notes during all council meetings. C, the secretary and treasurer are council leadership roles. Or D, none of the above. I'll give it just a few more seconds. And you can go ahead and close the poll and launch the results. And great, C is the correct answer. The secretary and treasurer are council leadership roles. And on to the next slide. Expectations for section council members. After you've completed the SOA volunteer agreement, as a section council leader, it's extremely important that you participate in monthly council calls, planning meetings, take polls and votes in a timely manner, and take on additional council tasks and roles as needed. All SOA volunteers are required to sign and adhere to SOA's volunteer agreement. The volunteer agreement includes items such as volunteer conduct, confidentiality, conflict of interest, volunteer contributions, and antitrust to protect all volunteers and the organization. And next slide. And then on the following slide, we will discuss the financial statements. We typically receive the financial statements about 6 weeks after the end of the quarter, with the exception of the fourth quarter, which is typically completed at the end of February. Anticipated release dates for each quarter are around May 15th for Q1, August 15th for Q2, November 15th for Q3, and lastly, March 15th for Q4. When you receive your financials, you will see that they include an FAQ tab that lists the common questions that come up with all sections each year. Some of these questions listed include: what is an administrative charge? What are commitments? Why are the majority of the member dues shown on the first quarter? Your engagement specialist will continue to update the frequently asked questions tab with new questions as they arise. And next slide, please. The items listed on your financial statement under revenue and expenses will vary from section to section. The main items you will see included are highlighted here. Items listed as revenue typically include section member dues and registration from webcast, seminars, and special section events. Most, if not all, of your section expenses will come from activities that add value for the section membership. You'll be coordinating newsletters, webcasts, podcasts, seminars, and research. You can also plan networking events and contests. There are many decisions you will need to make during the year about how best to spend the section's money, but the number one question in your mind should always be, does this add value to our section membership? That is why it is so important to plan how you'll spend your money early in the year. If you make the right choices, you could have enough money to offer a special seminar specifically for your section members, or possibly pay to have a well-known speaker at a meeting session. Spending the section's money is a good thing as long as it is done thoughtfully with the section members always in mind. And then next, I will turn it over to Dee.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. Next, we'd like to walk you through an example of a section's financial statement, including specific revenue and expenses that you'll see each quarter. Next slide, please. Here's an example of Q1. You can see that in addition to the revenue and expenses, there are explanatory notes listed that provide more details on each item. These notes are added by your engagement specialist. Most of your section membership dues are added in the first quarter. As you'd expect, the majority of members pay their section dues when they or their company pay their SOA member dues. In Q1, you'll also see the expense of the administrative charge. A fixed amount per member per year is charged to the section to cover routine overhead expenses. The administrative charge is currently $12 per member per year. The amount of the charge is reviewed each year by SOA staff, and the charge is calculated based on the number of section members as of December 31st. Next slide, please. And next slide. Next, in Q2, we'll highlight a few items that you could potentially see in all quarters. Here we have a highlighted seminar revenue, which is received when your section has coordinated a seminar and the section has made a profit. Seminars can be held in conjunction with one of the major SOA meetings or standalone. Seminars do not always receive revenue. If registration was low, the section may lose money. So this is important for the council to remember when planning. There are 2 expense lines highlighted in this example, including printing and copying and postage. Printing, copying, and postage will include any item that the section needs to be printed and or mailed. These expenses are rare. You may also see expenses for committee travel. This is typically included if the section has had a face-to-face meeting and has reimbursed council members for their expenses, which we'll discuss reimbursement a little bit later in this presentation. Next, we have a poll. Next slide. Go ahead and launch the poll. Which statement is true? The majority of section member dues occur in Q1. Your engagement specialist adds the explanatory notes to each financial statement. Each section receives quarterly financials, or all of the above. Go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And I am happy to see that everyone is still awake this morning and answered all of the above. Next slide, please. And next slide. Next, we'll talk about Q3. We'll again be highlighting a few items that you could potentially see in all quarters. Here we've highlighted webcast revenue. Webcasts can provide a nice profit for the section. This is calculated after the expenses have been assessed. The profit from webcasts is currently split 50-50 between the SOA and the sponsoring section. If the webcast is sponsored with another section or sections, the SOA receives 50% of revenue and the other 50% is split equally between the sponsoring sections. Typically, you need about 40 registrants to break even on a webcast. The two expenses highlighted are related to telephone charges and research. Each section receives a charge for their conferencing platform usage that's listed under telephone. All expenses related to Zoom will be included there. We encourage all members to use the computer audio option with Zoom, as this provides better audio and helps keep the phone expenses lower. The research charge is added when a section sponsors a research project. The research expense will only appear after SOA research works to secure a contract following the request for proposals process. Next slide, please. And next slide. Last but not least is Q4. In this example, we'll highlight a few items that only occur in this quarter. The main items that we'd like to highlight fall under the categories of postage and special supplies and services. In the fourth quarter, you'll see a special item under postage related to the annual section elections. There are some members that require paper ballots, and each section is charged for a portion of this mailing. You'll also see multiple charges related to special supplies and services. One charge is again related to the section elections. The sections split the charge for the platform that we use for section election voting. The second charge you'll see is for outgoing council member gifts. Each outgoing council member is typically given a gift card and gift, and the charges are then billed to the corresponding section. Next slide, please. We'll briefly mention the surplus guidelines. The guidelines were established as the result of an SOA leadership meeting several years ago. The ending fund balance should be between 25% and 200% of the year's total spending. This is calculated by your engagement specialist in the fourth quarter. We anticipate many sections will notice that their year-end financials will reflect a surplus over the guidelines for 2022, but don't panic. If your section is over the guidelines, like in this example, the section's money will not be taken away, but the section will need to determine ways to spend that surplus in a way that benefits your members. Too much surplus for too long raises the question of whether the sections are using the dues to benefit their members, and too little limits the section's ability to take on larger projects that would benefit their members. Throughout the year, there are many other items you may see that are specific to your section. Please work with your engagement specialist if you have any questions. And next, we'll have a poll. Let's go ahead and launch the poll. Which item will you only see on the Q4 financials? Section election postage, your administrative fee, webcast revenue, or all of the above? Give you all a few seconds to submit your votes. And let's go ahead and close that poll and share the results. Most of you got it right. Section election postage is the item that you'll only see on the Q4 financials. And next, I will turn it over to Carla.
Thank you, Dee. Okay, now to the exciting stuff. Let's talk about creating an annual budget. Next, please. As was stated before, it is not required that every section develop a budget, but it can be used as a guide to help the council make decisions on how to use their funds. This slide shows the information your engagement specialist can provide to prepare your budget. It is recommended that you use at least the last 3 years of numbers so you can see how the expenses have changed from year to year. Of course, 2020 and 2021 may not be a good representation of what a section might spend in a typical year. You might want to look back to 2019 and earlier. Then when someone brings up an idea that requires funds, please keep in mind that it is the treasurer who is responsible for knowing if it's something that the council can afford. And your engagement specialist will be able to assist you with this. Next. Of course, one of your guiding principles should be to provide value to your section members. Next. Your council gets to choose how to spend the section's money to provide the best possible value to your membership. This should include sponsoring original research or supporting an established research project, hiring a well-known speaker for a meeting session or webcast, or giving a journal subscription to your members. Maybe you'll decide to hold the networking event where one of your section members connects with a person that will help them get their next job or step up in their career. These are only a few ideas of how to use your section's financial resources. And I'm sure you'll all have great ideas that nobody else has even thought of yet. Remember, our objective is for sections to give the best value for section member dues. Next, please. And now we'll move on to expense reimbursements. Next. Typically, section council members are required to travel in conjunction with section business, such as attending a face-to-face section council meeting or an SOA leadership meeting. When travel is required, section council members are reimbursed for reasonable travel expenses up to $800. Additional expenses require prior approval from the council. There are additional travel expense guidelines that each council member must adhere to. Complete travel expense guidelines can be found within our best practices handbook, which we'll discuss shortly. If you have any questions about the travel expense guidelines, please reach out to your engagement specialist. And on the next slide, we have a poll. Please launch the poll. True or false, all council members are reimbursed up to $900 for reasonable travel expenses. And we'll just give you a minute for everybody to answer. And go ahead and close the poll and share the results. Great. It's false. All members are reimbursed up to $800. Next, please. Moving on to partnerships and contracts. Next. Sections are part of the SOA and as such cannot enter into any contract or external partnership without SOA approval. Your section is similar to a sub of a company. Therefore, SOA assumes all liability for contracts and partnerships. All contracts and partnerships with an outside organization must be reviewed by the SOA legal team. Multiple sections can financially support any event. The most common instance for sections to partner is on an event at one of the SOA's major meetings. That would be the health meeting, the life meeting, and the impact conference. Webcasts and research or other activities that can be co-sponsored by sections. In that instance, the council who submits the proposal to other sections must provide information about the event, justification for the request of additional funding, and the anticipated financial responsibility for each section. Once each of the sections has received approval from their council, the details will be provided to the engagement specialist who will develop the partnership agreement. Each section chair will sign the agreement, and this will be kept on file. Funds will be deducted from the appropriate section account after the event. This formality helps document the partnership and is important because payments can come months after an event and be dealt with by different council officers. Here are some points to keep in mind when entering into a partnership with another section. Make sure that each section makes a substantive contribution. Clearly define the roles for each section. Clearly define and mutually understand the benefit or opportunity and the cost or risk for each section. And lastly, have a clear understanding of the expected outcome of the partnership. If you've been approached to create a partnership or sign a contract with an external company or organization, Your first call should be to your engagement specialist. They can review the partnership and provide guidance on the types of partnerships or contracts the SOA typically agrees to. And next, I'll turn it over to Beth.
Thank you, Carla. Let's go to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about best practices. Next slide, please. On the screen, you will see several resources. Don't worry, you don't have to try and scramble and write each of these down. We'll be sending everyone a copy of this presentation. The second item provided is a link for a community within SOA Engage that we have created just for you. The best practices handbook and expense reimbursement form have been saved here, as well as other valuable information we hope that you will utilize. In addition to these resources, you will receive invitations to attend our board meeting outcomes webcasts. The webcasts are held after each board meeting and highlight the outcomes and how they relate to each of the sections. And let's go to the next slide, please. So now I'm going to give you a quick update on the community engagement pilot. Next slide, please. As many of you know, part of our long-term growth strategy and strategic plan is to build diverse communities. The emerging topics community, which consists of modeling, technology, and the predictive analytics and futurism sections, was launched as a pilot in November of 2021. Throughout the pilot, we gathered feedback, learnings, and a lot of survey data. The emerging topics community will continue with a few changes. The community will leave the SOA Hub, which is known as the app, and the discussion forum will move to a LinkedIn group. There will be topic subgroups for modeling, PAF, predictive analytics and futurism, that is, and technology. There will also be a content work group, which will focus on producing content, such as webcasts, articles, podcasts, meeting sessions, as well as research. There will be an engagement work group that will focus on activities and events, the discussion forum on LinkedIn, and there will be a community liaisons to answer questions about the community and help people get involved within the community. Next, we'd like to open it up for questions. So please enter any questions you may have in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Anybody have any questions? I think we have a question. Will this be shared? Yes, like I said, we are recording this webcast and we will send you the slides. So you will have them for yourself, so you can go back and reference this at any point in time that you would like to. If there's specific parts that you would like to share with your council, please feel free to do so. Any other questions? I know we shared a lot of information today, specifically about the financials, but we're here to help you. Our secretary is responsible for saving meeting notes, and for how long. You're responsible for distributing them. Your engagement specialist will actually save your meeting notes to an SOA drive where they will be where your engagement specialist can access them if you need to go back and relook at things. You may want to, as a secretary, hold on to the meeting notes while you are secretary for the council in case a question does come up. When do you recommend meeting notes be distributed, and who do we submit to? All right. You know, other presenters, please feel free to jump in with any of these questions if you'd like. Meeting notes can be distributed right after the meeting, or if you want to clean them up. Some people prefer to take a day, read through them again, take a little bit of time, make sure they have them cleaned up, and then submit them. But it's up to you, but it's best to submit them shortly after the meeting as much as possible. Some people do wait till right before the next meeting, but a lot of people have forgotten then what happened. So it's a good thing to try to resubmit them out to, and you would send them all to your council members. So it goes to all the council members so they can all see the meeting notes. And who do we, and just answer that, who do we send the meetings to, notes to? So you don't submit them to anyone, you just copy everybody. And you should also copy your engagement specialist when you submit those meeting notes, because they will want to see them as well. Any other questions? I think we have, do we have one more? When do quarterly financial outcomes become available for creating reports? Good question. Most of our the quarterly financials are available within, and hey, Dee, please help correct me on this one. I'm going to let you answer this one because you're more closer to it than I am.
Sure. Quarterly financials are generally released approximately 6 weeks after the end of the quarter, with the exception of Q4. Those typically take 8 weeks or 10, depending on how quickly SOA is able to close out the year.
And then the next question, is there a portal for our section or do we use email to distribute? Dee, I'm going to let you try to take this one as well.
There are a couple of ways that they can be distributed. You, as a section council, may decide to use your SOA Engage group on the SOA Engage portal, or you can use your meeting invitation to attach meeting notes and send out to that distribution.
I think different sections have tried different things and do use different things.
Subsections also use the listserv to
Good.
distribute the notes.
That's a good point, Carla. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Any other questions? You guys have got have asked a lot of great questions so far. Okay, we got another one. Where are minutes stored? Do all section members see or just the council? Dee, you want to take that?
Sure. Depending on how you choose to distribute them, you may copy both council and friends or just council. As far as storage goes, the SOA stores those on an internal drive. We are certainly able to share those out with you if you have a request for a specific time period.
Thanks, Dee. Any additional questions? Got another one. Oh, do we actually send it to the section members? No, no. It's shared within just the council and the council and friends. That's it. Not actually out to all section members. And we have another one. Okay, got it. All right. Any other questions? So like we said, we will send you a link to this recording and the slides. And we'll show you how to get into, we'll tell you how to get into SOA Engage, where the best practices handbook is held. We can actually attach a copy of that if people would like that when we send out this, send out the recording link to you and the slides. We can do that as well. And also remember, your engagement specialist is here. They are a font of knowledge, just a wealth of knowledge, and they've had experience with different sections doing different things. They have lots of great ideas. So don't be afraid to tap into them and send them a note or call them and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing it this way. What do you think? Or do you have any other ideas? They are there to support you and help you. So please feel free to tap into any of them and send any of us a question. If you have a question, if you have additional questions, we're here to answer questions as well. We can't thank you enough for your participation today. We really appreciate it. And we really, all of us, look forward to working with you next year on your councils. Thank you very much. And so we're going to give you some time back. You get a half an hour back in your day. Yay! Have a great day, everybody.